This is our second interview with Bill Holbert. So, Bill, the first time we talked, I got nervous and I blanked and I introduced you as Wild Bill, but I didn't ask. Can you tell us when and how you actually got that nickname?
That's actually a very humorous story, and I'll have to give a little bit of backstory to it to be able to set it up. There was a guy. There was like five Bills in Bocas, and there was a guy named Bocas Bill, and Bocas Bill owed me about $25,000, and he couldn't pay, and so he didn't have anything to pay with, so we were in this difficult situation, he has to pay, but we didn't have anything. But he had an airplane, a small ultralight airplane that had pontoons, and it was in a crate. It had never been used. It was brand new, in a crate that he had bought years before, and never had even uncrated it. So I went and I took it away as part of the debt, and I took my boys to go get it, and we got it out of the house, we brought it home, and we uncrated it. I didn't know how to put it together, and I had a friend named Danny who was a pilot, and I wasn't a pilot. I never flown anything in my whole life. And my friend Danny said he knew about stuff like that, and he could put it together. He wasn't actually an aircraft mechanic, which is perfect. And so he came over to the house and put it together for me and got it running, and we worked on it in the garage. And I had a really nice garage with any kind of tool you could even imagine was in there. And so he put it together, and we had it running, and we took it down and put it in the water beside the dock, and just kind of drove it around just in the water, just not taking off or anything. Just drove it around the water to make sure everything worked, and it all worked. So then I just left it tied up there, and he said, one day we'll find somebody to teach you to fly it because capable of, didn't feel up to date, or he hadn't flown in years, and I didn't feel up to date to do it, and on the water it's really different. So it went well. So three or 4 weeks went by, and we had a huge party at my house, and there's like maybe 100 people there. But I had a huge house too. So everybody was there, and so Danny starts giving me shit. He's drunk, and Danny was about 50 years old. He was 20 years older than I was. So he starts giving me shit about. He said, I can't believe that thing's been floating down there, and for 3 weeks, and your crazy ass hasn't even tried to fly it yet. And he was joking, but I was drunk too, and so I listened to it for a while. And it pissed me off, and so I went down to the dock, and I got in the thing and cranked it up, and everybody comes running down like, no, and I'm shit-faced drunk. So I cranked it up, and off we go to the races. And I had flown in small, like, Cessna before. I'd never landed, but I had a friend in high school that had a pilot's license, and we used to take girls to, like, Alabama and have her lunch and stuff like that, and and so it was pretty cool. And he was 16 years old, and he had a pilot's license. So I remember being in a plane, and I know how all the control surfaces work and everything, so off we go. So I took off, and I have there is two mangrove islands in front of my house that are about like maybe a mile out. So I took off, and I went and I flew fairly easily. It wasn't very difficult to do, and flew around the mangrove island and came back. So I was really proud of myself at this point. And it was probably like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and everybody is on the dock watching like, oh God, we're going to watch Bill kill himself. And so I come around and I landed, but the landing was like something off of a cartoon. There's a lot of drag on pontoons when you hit water, and I wasn't prepared for that. So when I touched the water, which wasn't very smooth either, the water was choppy. When I touched the water, the nose of the plane kind of came down. So I pulled back on the stick, and so I'm like, doing, like my Wile E. Coyote or something, coming in. But I landed it. And I came back and put it up to the dock and kill the engine, and got off. And everybody cheered, like, who can't believe he didn't kill himself. And Danny says, that's our Bill, our Wild Bill. And then so that's how that was about 2008, and that was the first time anybody ever called me Wild Bill.
That kind of story definitely warrants the nickname for sure.
Did you like the nickname?
Yeah,
did you mind the
name? It kind of went with the persona. Yeah, it kind of went with the persona, and so I would even introduce myself that way, like, hey, I'm Wild Bill, blah blah blah.
Okay, I got nervous. I got nervous and I blanked, and I was like, oh gosh, did I just call him a name that he's like, I don't want to be called that.
No, it didn't bother me at all. Actually, that was kind of it was a term of endearment between my friends back in those days. So, and it still is kind of. Everybody everywhere calls me Wild Bill, even today. So, and even here, even the Panamanians even. So it's just normal.
Well, really, you gave us so much great information. There was only a couple of things we didn't really touch on in our first interview, which was just your other two victims along with when you were doing the hitmen. Is there anything you can tell us in regards to those two?
Well, okay. The two I'm paying for, like here in Panama, is another thing that's a little bit interesting. In Panama, one act. So I'm paying for 3 homicides. The Browns are 1 homicide. The Bo Eisler, and that's not his name either. I don't really. There's just like I say, I live in a rogues gallery here, and so everybody's a crook. And so this guy, Bo Berry or Bo Eisler, we don't even know what his name is. I don't even know what his name is, really. I don't think the Panamanian government really knows what his name is. Everybody has like 4 or 5 passports. I had 7 passports when I was arrested, incidentally, getting different names, actual passports, and so not fake ones. And so Bo was what he did. I don't know what he did in the States. They said he was an art gallery owner or something, and I don't know him. I didn't know anything about him. I was just sent to do a job. And he dealt in pre-Columbian art, which is an illegal trade in Panama, but it's very lucrative. Now, what pre-Columbian art is little gold figurines, smaller than the size of the palm of your hand, or about the same size as the whole palm, without the fingers of your hand. Different pieces that were made by like shamans and like pre-Columbian, meaning before the Spaniards were here, like before 1500. And so these pieces of art, very small, even though maybe they're only 2 or 3 ounces of gold, will sell at auction in the United States for $30 and $40 and $50 and $60,000. They're very lucrative, and you can find them everywhere. They're not very hard to get a hold of. But Panama confiscates them as part of their heritage, and they don't want them to leave the country, so it's illegal to trade in them. He traded in those, and I don't know who he pissed off, but he pissed off somebody. Anyway, the order came down that he was to be eliminated, and so I was sent to do that job again, and I did that job. I didn't know Bo that well, and a lot of people. He seemed like a nice enough guy, but a lot of people didn't like him on the island. He wasn't well liked, and I'm not trying to speak ill of the dead. I'm just telling the truth. And anyway, so I brought him out to the house I'd invited him out to my home for a party that didn't exist. And I went to pick him up, and so I did a job in the boat on the way home. Well, I never went to my house either. I went to the cemetery that I had, and so I did a job there, and that's how all that went down. Again, that was a deal which I don't really know a whole lot about. I did that just on spec, as far as I was told, this is a contract and this is what you do, and so I didn't. And I'm again not trying to make light of what was done. It's horrible, terrible. But I'm just trying to tell you the nuts and bolts of what occurred. I did the job in my sport fishing boat. I had a nice little sport fisher, and in the middle of the ocean. And one of the things that, like, a lot of people ask this question, and I'll tell it. How did you kill people? Well, to me, it seems, if it was going to be me that was going to die, I don't want to know beforehand. That's a terrible thing to think about, isn't it? If someone would say, hey, I'm going to kill your ass, and then you have to wait until they do so. That would be very traumatic to me. Also, as a professional, that's a pain in the ass, because you don't know. I mean, like, for me personally, if I know that I'm going to die, I'm going to fight like hell, because I have no other choice. It's just going to make your job harder. So one is a lot of trauma, and 2, it's a risk for the hitter. So nobody have I ever killed in my existence that knew that was going to happen before. And studying like medicine, the weakest link in the human body is between where the brain stem attaches to the and I would shoot them right there in the back of the neck. Now, you're alive 1 second and 1 second you're dead the next. And there's absolutely no pain, and it's just like lights out. There's no way you can make a mistake. If you shoot somebody in the head, I've seen some crazy shit in my life. If you shoot somebody in the head and the bullet can skirt around the outside of the skull, or I mean, I've seen weird things happen in my life, and so that's not a good way to kill somebody, shooting them in the head. It's not a good way. But if you shoot somebody in the back of the neck, just above where the neck connects to the head, there's absolutely not a possibility that you can fail, and or they will not feel any pain, not jerk. I mean, they just fall like now that body is no longer inhabited by a soul. I mean, instantly. And so there's no. I mean, I'm just talking the trade. And so
you did this in
how I did that, and that's how I.
You did this in the sport fishing boat?
I did. He sat in front of it was a center console boat. He sat in the front, and I had music playing, and he was happy and tapping his foot and ready to go lay some fix and do some blow, and of course that was not true. And then so I shot him in the back of the neck, and then he fell over just dead instantly. I was out in the middle of the ocean where there's nobody, and so I had a tarp ready underneath the thing and just rolled him up on the tarp and took him to the cemetery. Now, if you want to talk body disposal, go ahead.
Sorry, I guess my question would be: now you're in the middle of the ocean. Disposing the body in the ocean wasn't as effective.
It's a bad idea. Everybody says that, but it's a term, and we want to talk about professional body disposal, how you get rid of bodies. The reason that you don't put something in the ocean is because it has a tendency to come back. It's just a piece of it. I've seen people be arrested for just a hand float up on the beach, and they can put things together. I mean, if there's a body, there's a crime. If there's nobody, there's no crime. And then you say, well, Bill, they found bodies buried in the ground. Well, here's why. If you take a body in the Caribbean, this is a trade secret as well. If you take a body in the Caribbean, in the jungle, you bury it in the ground, there's so many little critters in the ground, so many insects in the ground, that you can leave it in the ground for 6 to 8 weeks and then dig it back up, and the only thing that's there are the whitest and cleanest bones you've ever seen, and fingernails and hair. There isn't anything left, absolutely nothing left. Then you take the bones and you put them into a very thick and heavy burlap sack and hit them with a sledgehammer until they're powder and pour them into the water. If you take a body and you try and put concrete shoes on it like in the movies and put it into the water, or you say, we'll poke a hole in it, you're just asking for problems. I mean, that could come back. No, I mean, I lost. They found 2 bodies on my behalf, and so I lost. But they were in process of this. They were in this process when they were found.
So you fast forward like 3 or 4 weeks, and at that point you would have dug them up, put them in the sack, pulverized them, and put them in the ocean. Okay,
about 8 weeks.
However long it took them to discover it. Yeah. So say if the
in that time period.
Yeah, like if the incident happened in, say, 2-3 weeks ago and they discovered them, you were about 5 weeks away from completely disposing of all existence or evidence at that point, right? So they found the body.
There would never have been Exactly. Well, what happened was, and we'll have to go to the next one. I was paid by a man to kill his wife, and I did. And that was the stupidest. That's why I'm in prison, I think, and that's another thing. I don't think, and forgive me for saying what I'm saying, and maybe your listeners won't agree with me, but I don't think that God was terribly angry with me for the things that I did, soldiers killing soldiers. That's just part of the game, and I don't think, and I'm not trying to say it was right at all, but I don't think that karma or God or the universe or whatever you believe in was angry with me until I killed Cheryl Hughes, who was really a civilian. And there's we say don't pitch the bitch, which means you don't kill women, generally speaking, unless they're part of the game, unless they're in the game. People's families are off limits. And a man named Keith Worrell that was divorcing his wife, and he was a drug trafficker from Miami, Florida, and he met a new girl and had a new young wife, and had like separated from his wife, but everything, because he was a drug trafficker, he put everything in his wife's name when they were happy, when everything was going well, and so when he wanted to divorce her, he was actually like losing his whole empire, everything that he built. And so in Panama, there's none of that 50-50 rule stuff like in the States. Whatever's in your name is yours, and whatever's in her name is hers. Well, everything was in her name, all the houses and all the businesses and all the stuff was in her name. So his solution was to have her whacked. And I turned the job down twice. He approached me about it twice, and I turned it down twice, and then finally accepted it, kind of under pressure. He whined like a little bitch to the higher ups who called me and asked me to do the job, and so I did it. And if I'd never done that job, I'd still be free, or I probably would be dead by now. Somebody else would have killed me. So maybe in retrospect, I'm not really sad for the way anything happened. I mean, I wish I had never killed anybody. I want to be straight with that. I want to be some repentant. But I mean, talking about in the scheme of things, the reason that I'm in prison is because Cheryl Hughes had a family, and supposedly Keith had told everybody that she didn't have anybody that would miss her, so on and so forth, and so I did that job. And this is really shitty what happened to me. So I did the job, got paid for the job, $50,000. I got paid nothing. I did it because my bosses told me I kind of had to. And so I did the job I didn't want to, because I knew Cheryl. I mean, not a lot, but I knew her socially, and she was a pretty nice person. I didn't think she was too bad. And it took me 3 times to do it. I invited her over to my home to have drinks with the idea to kill her there, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I tried, and I did try twice. I invited her over to my house twice, and then the third time I went to her house and did it there. I just couldn't. You know, my morals were really hurting me there. I mean, I couldn't. I'm like, I liked Sheriff, and then the third time I went over to her house, and she was so distraught because of her divorce, and she was drunk, and she was like losing it. She really was kind of losing it. And she even said, she's like, I just don't want to live anymore. And I think that and then I was like, I grabbed a hold of that statement. And like that was the thing that allowed me erroneously to carry out the terrible thing, because she didn't deserve what she got at all. I should have killed fucking Keith. I wish I had. And anyway, so this is what happened afterwards, subsequently. So I did put her next to Bo in you know, being done, like meaning in process of cleaning, like body disposal. And then I went to Costa Rica, like I did every year, to a house that I own in Tuyalba, and for a little cabin that I own, and I spent about 2 or 3 weeks there during the rainy season, because there it's nice. It's not rainy in Costa Rica, it's raining in Panama. While I was in in Costa Rica, unbeknownst to me, having no idea that none of this was happening, Cher's family came looking for Keith and asking Keith, where's Cher? We've lost her. Where is she? And this is the Keith that said that there wasn't any, that she didn't have any family. And then this is what happened. Somehow, I had a house that had like a watchman, and when I say watchman, that's a Panamanian word that means like night watchman. And the watchman is just an Indian guy who doesn't know anything about much of anything, and a gringo shows up at my house, and he lets him in. So Keith goes to my house while I'm not there and puts like Cher's panties and like jewelry and all kinds of shit on the kitchen table of my home. Calls the police and asks them to do a search. So they go and they find this, but they said, well, it's still not enough for an arrest warrant. He knew where my cemetery was because I'd helped him do some things before, and with some problems that he'd had before. I helped him work out a couple of problems, and we'll just leave that there. So he does this. My cemetery was on an island. He goes and he takes Cher's dog to the island and calls the police and says, I have found where the remains of Cheryl Hughes are, because her dog missed her and swam 2 kilometers across the ocean, and found Cher's body. And I mean, like, who in the fuck would believe that? But Panamanian authorities did. So they dug it up, and I'm sure that he paid some money to them also to make his story acceptable. And because that's what you do here. And then my guys from the DHOTA, the Panamanian DHOTA is like the FBI. It's the Panamanian version of the FBI. They call me and it's like, hey, man, we got a problem. I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, everybody in the world is looking for you. Stay away. Stay where you are. I'm like, okay, because these are guys that I paid on my payroll. They're like, you stay away. We'll let it calm down for 6 months, and when it's calmed down, we'll squash the arrest warrants, and you come back. And I said, fine. I said, give me an account number. I'm going to send you $5,000 a piece. Just to make everybody happy. And so they did. So I did. And everybody was cool. But it just went viral. Like the Americans that were in Panama began like really hammering the web. And one day I woke up from sleep and turned on the television in Costa Rica, and there I was looking back at myself, and they were like, El Salvaje Bill, Wild Bill. El Salvaje Bill, the worst murderer in the history of Central America, hundreds of deaths, and I'm like, oh my God. And then began the odyssey of trying to get away, which failed.
Right. So I guess talking about the apprehension, what were you attempting to do when you actually were apprehended? Where were you trying to go?
Well, I was in Nicaragua. I was hiding in Nicaragua, and I was trying to get to Bluefields. And I was on a river. I didn't know how to get there. I mean, I was trying to get to Bluefields because Bluefields is a town on the Caribbean coast in Nicaragua where I have people there. And if I could have got there, I knew I'd be safe. There's some islands there I could hide on and just like let everything cool down for a couple of years or something. So I threw $50,000 in a bag and a pistol, and away I went. And I was staying in some cabanas, like little cabins there. And it's really a comedy there. Nobody knew who I was. But the Nicaraguan military invaded a Costa Rican island on the river, and that's where I was. And when they invaded, they arrested everybody there. And I was driving a boat that was stolen from Costa Rica, and that I stole from Costa Rica. And so, like a little bit of checking and stuff, and they arrested me because I had a pistol and like $50,000 in cash. And so I told the captain, the Nicaraguan captain of it was an army guy. So they said, hey man, relax. They beat the shit out of me. I mean, they beat the shit out of me, tied me up and stomped me, and they hate Americans. I mean, they hate them. Nicaraguans hate Americans because they're like Soviet, I mean, they go back there, they go with Russia and Venezuela, so they hate the Americans. And so they're like, why is there a gringo on the river? You're a drug trafficker. And I'm like, well, I'm really not a drug trafficker, actually. But I said, but look, man, I'm like, my nose is busted, and I'm trying to keep them from raping my wife, and, And so I'm like, look, dude, I don't have $50,000. I have $25,000, and you have $25,000. And his eyes got real big, and he said, get this man a cigarette. Why do we have him tied up? Somebody get him a drink. And so then, like, they were all my buddies. But it gets crazy. I mean, the story's crazy. I had gone a week before to get gas, not a week, maybe 3 days before, to the Costa Rican side to get a tank of LP gas for the stove and some provisions. While I was there, somebody recognized me and had called the police. The police are not very well. Okay, Nicaragua has a military, but Costa Rica does not. Costa Rica doesn't have a military. They only have police. They don't have a standing army. They don't have that. So Nicaragua invaded this island, and the Costa Ricans can't do anything about it. But the police had commandeered a Teletica helicopter. Teletica is the Costa Rican news channel, it's like CNN in Costa Rica. And they had commandeered or borrowed a helicopter, and they were riding up and down the river. I had no idea. Running up and down the river looking for me because somebody had several people had called in and said they'd seen me. So I'm standing on a Costa Rican island that's being occupied by the Nicaraguan military, standing off with Costa Rican police on the other side, and nobody knows who I am, and I'm drinking shots of Flor de Caña, which is a good rum that's made in Nicaragua with this army captain. And if I had just left, I would probably have made it to Bluefish, but I, being a stupid ass, I'm like, well, hey man, I want a license. If I'm giving you $25,000, I want a license. I want to be able to drive up and down this river, and I don't want nobody to stop me. I don't want nobody to bother me. I want to be. I'm like, I was like creating a little piece of liberty here with him through corruption. And he's like, yeah. And so he like gives me his card and writes his name. His name is Carlos Sanchez. I remember. He writes his name on the card and he gives it to me. So anybody stops you, you give them that and tell them, whatever. So fine. So while we're standing there talking, smoking and drinking, I hear a helicopter, and I don't know why, but I knew what it was. And the helicopter. And it flies over, and it says Teletico on the side. So the Nicaraguans are going apeshit with anger. And they raise their AK-47s, and I knew what it was. And I'm screaming in Spanish, shoot, tira, because I knew what it was. I wanted them to shoot it down. And the Costa Rican guy sticks a bullhorn out the window, and he says in Spanish, tienes el salvaje vil, el más buscado sicario en la historia del mundo. You have Wild Bill, the most looked after assassin in the history of Central America. And the guy looks at me, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. And then somebody hit me in the back of the head with an AK-47, and that was the last thing that I knew until I woke up, hog-tied in a little bitty shack, waiting on a boat to come and get me. And that was the end of the career of Wild Bill.
So now, if you didn't stick around, for drinks and whatnot, where do you believe you'd be today? Do you think you would have been home free and you would have been?
I would have jumped. I don't think that I would have got caught. I really don't. I would have probably got in the boat and headed down the river to the coast, because it wasn't very far. Maybe 2 hours, 3 hours tops. I could have been in Bluefield. And the only reason I hadn't moved was because the Nicaraguan military was blocking the way. That's the only reason I hadn't gone on. I don't know, but I think that probability was really high that I would have made it. Who knows what would have happened? I mean, it's kind of hard to guess, but I think my plan was pretty good. It's just like a comedy, like God intervened, like a comedy of errors got me popped, because they didn't even know who I was. They had no idea who I was.
Right. Now, and you may not be able to answer this question, but to me it sounds as though you really got railroaded by the gentleman who asked to have his wife killed. Is he still alive today? Do we know that? Like, if I were him... I
have no idea where he is.
Okay, I'd be very worried for my own
safety.
I think
he tried to have me killed. When I first got put in prison, he tried to have me killed. I've survived 8 assassination attempts in prison. 8. And that's amazing, because anybody can kill anybody here. I'll tell you how they kill you here. They find a crackhead, a guy that likes to do lots of cocaine or crack, and they say, hey, we're going to give you $5,000, give your family on the street $5,000, and we're going to give you a lifetime supply of drugs. Kill this guy. Here's a pistol. And I mean, like, he just goes and pokes a hole in you. And it doesn't matter who you are. Nobody's bulletproof, are they? And so, I mean, this guy could just walk up to you and shoot your ass. And so I've survived 8 in my first year in prison. 6 attempts in Panama City and 6 attempts in Chiriquí. And then they stopped altogether. I can't really talk much about why they stopped. We'll just leave it there. But I survived. I'm kind of proud of that. I mean, like, I'm pretty fucking hard to kill. And anyway, so that's how that went down.
Can you speak to how those attempts failed? Like, was it like, did you just sense, your spidey senses were going off? Like, what? How did?
No, like, I think I'm maybe charmed. Maybe I'm charmed. In Panama City, at first I was in Panama City. They had me in a place where they're all capos. When I say capos, like other guys that are really wealthy and powerful criminals. And so they put me in there. And the guy told me, he said, they're going to try to kill you. And so I said, okay, what do I do? And so they gave me a 9mm and told me, said, defend yourself. And so every time anybody new and odd came there, I just opened fire. Fuck them. I'm already in prison and I'm already in deep shit. So I tried not to shoot anybody. And the reason I tried not to shoot anybody was because if there's a dead man, we're going to have to explain it. We can't hide a dead man in prison. But I would just open fire any time that like the rival gang kids would show up there. They don't show up alone. They show up 6 or 7 of them and armed. But I would act so violently that they couldn't they couldn't enter. That happened 3 times in Panama City, and then I had a guy try to stab me, and actually did. He cut me pretty bad in Panama City, and also in here in this prison where I am. But that was the first time I was here, like the first year I was in prison. For the first year I was here where I am now, for like 8 months. Then when I got to Chiriquí, there was a gang. I don't want to say their name, but there was a gang there that was affiliated with some people in Bocas, and somebody had sent to have me killed there. Once 3 guys came with knives to kill me, and I got cut pretty bad in that instance as well. But I defended myself very, very well against 3, and then they were like, shit, they don't know what to do. And then 2 times before, one time, this happened to me. Check this out. A kid came to the door and he's like, hey, Bill. And I went to the door, and he raised a .38 revolver and pulled the trigger in my face. And the gun misfired. Just didn't go off. And I broke his arm in the door. I caught it. I didn't give him a chance to pull the trigger again. I grabbed his arm, and I broke it back against the door, and it broke his arm. And I actually called the guards and held his arm there while he's screaming, and called the guards to come and like, hey, come here and take care of this shit, you know. And so they come and got him, and I gave him the pistol. And then the last time, the last time really, honestly, wasn't an attempt. They came to talk to me. The gangs came to talk to me and told me that I had to find a way to get out of the prison, leave that prison and go to another prison, because I was an embarrassment to them, because they're trying to kill me and they can't, and people are laughing at them, was basically what they said. But I fixed that. I still had money then, and I fixed that problem with cash money. And everybody was okay after that. And then I moved to fix my problem in the street, and did, and since then I've not had any attempts against my life since that day. And since that's been like 10 years ago, I've not, from that time forward, I've never had anybody try to kill me.
What's your relationship status currently? Are you single? Are you, I'm
divorced. Or like, just, man,
okay.
I'm telling you. I'll tell you something. I've been through a lot of shit in my life, and I ain't never been through nothing that hurt me as bad as my most recent divorce. I married a woman, a young girl, in 2018, the end of 2018. Or no, excuse me, in January 2019. And that was when I was running the prison in Chiriquí, and it was great. I mean, I got to see her almost every day. I got to fuck her 3 times a week. I mean, it was great. It was almost like not being in prison, you know, and so that was easy. But when they sent me here to where I am now, which is a very hard prison, and then COVID hit, and they cut the visits off, and I don't think that she signed on for that. And I tried every way in the world. I paid for everything. I took care of her very well as I could, but, I mean, I'm missing in action. And it's a sad thing that happened. It almost killed me. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I can't believe that it hurt me that bad. If you want the truth, but I think that I loved her more than I've ever loved anybody in my whole life. And when she did something, I won't talk bad about her. I'm not going to say anything bad about her, but what she did and the way she did it was so cruel that, man, I mean, I was 2 months like this, like staring at the ceiling and crying like a little baby. I mean, it's just bad. It's terrible. It's the worst thing. Like I had invested a lot into this relationship, not only with money, but like invested a lot. And I really was surprised by what happened. I mean, it was like really caught off guard. I never thought that would ever happen. And so I mean, I know that I have treated women unfairly in my life, and I'm telling you what, I'll never do that again. I don't want anybody ever to have to suffer the way that I did for between April and really recently. I'm over it now. I'm over it now. I'm divorced and recently divorced, very recently divorced. Divorce is easier in Central America. It's not that hard to get one. But man, what I lost my freedom. They put me in prison. They screwed me. They gave me a sentence that wasn't legal. People tried to kill me. All my friends abandoned me. I went from being one of the wealthiest men in the Republic of Panama to being one of the poorest. None of that shit bothered me at all. Never bothered me at all. I mean, I would be angry about it, but it's not something that like really affected me. But this was probably one of the first times in my life that that I was like really just flattened. And but I'm glad that it happened. And I'm glad that God took the person out of my life who isn't going to be with me in the hard times. Thank you, God, for doing that. And I'm so glad that I had to go through that pain as well, because now I know what that feels like, and I'll never do anybody like that ever again. So I'm blessed in a way.
I have my final question is upon your release, whether it be in just under 3 years or 15 or 16, are you out of the game? Are you, is it basically I'm getting a boat, I'm minding my own business, or, obviously that kind of lifestyle is very, it's high energy, it's high adrenaline. I could see that almost being like a drug. Like, are you planning on just taking it easy, or have you thought of that?
I got a plan. I mean, I have a real plan. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy a boat. I'm working really hard right now to make a career out of writing. I could never work in organized crime again. I'm too famous. It'd be like, the hell am I going to do that? It'd be like George Young trying to move cocaine. You can't. There's no way. And so and if I did, the first time anybody went missing, who they going to knock on my door of? They're going to come and see me. And so, and not only that, I don't want to. Man, God, I don't miss that life. Like we talked about it earlier, I'm glad I got to experience some of that shit, but I wasn't happy. I'm happier now than I was when I was free. I'm a lot happier now. And so, I have this plan, really, I want to find some chick that's, maybe if I get out now, I'll be 43, 44, or if I get out later, I'll be 55, 56. And then both of those, I'm in good shape. I'm in good shape, and I don't look too bad. I'm not too beat up, and I think that I still have 20 or 30 good years. Either way, I'll still have 20 or 30 good years. So I want to buy a boat and live on a boat and write, and find some chick that's half my age that wants to have my babies, and just go and hide in the corner and have lots of sex and fish and drink beer, and that's it.
Every man's dream.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, definitely.
And so that's what I'm going to do.
Do you ever think you would go visit the States again? Outside of any criminal charges, if all that was disappeared, do you think there's anything ever to bring you back to the States, or you would just find your quiet corner in the water and stay there?
Girl, Rachel, I think that I don't belong there anymore. I can't, forgive me, but the States looks like a politically correct war zone, and I couldn't imagine that anybody would want to welcome me back there. I've been gone 20 years, or 16, 17 years, and thinking and looking at what's going on in the States and talking to all the people. I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people, young people, that live in the States. Man, I would be an alien there. The world that I grew up in, this little southern world that I grew up in, no longer exists anywhere. And so, in order to go home, I'm going to have to find a time machine, and until they make one of them, I think my life is here, and I'm accustomed to the Latin American lifestyle. I'm accustomed to their culture and the women, and I just think that when I said the women, but really Latin American women, I like them, and I don't see myself going back to the States. I'm like my mother. I have a mother, a wonderful mother, the best mother in the whole world. You couldn't believe it, and the terrible son that I am. She's so wonderful. I would probably bring her here instead of me going there, or if she would want to come, and I'm sure she would actually. I think we've already talked about it. So
your life story has major motion picture written all over it. Although even if you removed all of the homicides or the contract killings, I think it'd be a pretty incredible story, but I guess the challenge would be to find a producer, a production company that would be willing to, put that into a movie. Have you, aside from the writing, I'm sure that's crossed your mind, but I don't know how realistic that would be. because, but obviously the whole story.
It's my dream.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. I can't imagine that somebody wouldn't want it. I mean, if you want the truth, I can't imagine that. Like one of the reasons that it hasn't happened is because I'm just not well known in the States. I'm super famous in Panama, but I'm not well known in the States, and so that's what I'm here doing. If you want the truth, I'm trying to sell a book to a publisher right now. I wrote a book called Long Live the King Wild Bill, and it has to do with like 3 weeks before my arrest until the first year of my captivity, and it has a lot of things in it that are just incredible. I mean, like some of the things, like my being put in prison, flying back, the big torture they gave me in Nicaragua, all of the women police officers that I fucked while I was in prison. I mean, like just an incredible amount of crazy shit that nobody has ever lived. I mean, I'm aware. I'm like, it's weird sometimes. I feel like a really normal dude. I mean, I'm being honest with you. I feel like a really normal person. I don't feel abnormal. I don't wake up in the morning and think I'm different than anybody else, but I'm aware that I'm living a life that is absolutely insane. I mean, it's not normal at all. And that experience, even apart from the economic benefits to me, it should be told. Somebody should know about. I mean, what I'm living. It's interesting. I mean, people would probably study it, or like it's a strange phenomenon in my life. It's not normal, and I love my life, and I wouldn't, if you said, well, who could you? Tomorrow we can make you anybody who you want to be. Who would you like to be? And I want to be Wild Bill. I don't want to be anybody else. I like what's happening, even though it's hard. My life's really, really fucking hard. But I like it, and I'm blessed to be able to live it, and I'm thankful every single day. I wake up, the first thing I do every day is thank God, another day, one more day. Something good's going to happen today. And so I want to do what you're saying, man. I mean, that's the goal. There's no law against. One of the things I run up against every time I talk to an agent is, well, son of Sam. Son of Sam doesn't apply to me. First of all, it doesn't apply to anybody because that's been stricken down in the United States as well, by the way. But even the son of Sam laws don't apply to me. I'm not in the state, and my story is such that I could tell my story leaving the homicides out, and it would still be interesting enough to sell. And legal to sell. I mean, I'm in Panama, in the United States. I ain't got nothing to do with states. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to do. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I'm here for. I mean, I don't really need to look for any more fame. I'm famous enough. But this fame that I have, this crazy fame that I have in Panama, ain't never paid me a red cent. And ain't been nothing but a terrible pain in the ass. And so, but I still have this feeling and belief that sooner or later it will convert into money. And I love playing the character Wild Bill. I'm not going to lie to you. I love it. I love being Bill. And because, we all have three masks that we wear. One that we show the world. That's Wild Bill, His Holiness Wild Bill. Then one we show our friends, our intimate friends, that's more closer to the real you, and then the mask you wear for yourself. Because there's even things that you can't accept about yourself. The truths, they're so difficult to accept that even you can't accept truths about yourself. But that's the closest to you that you can know is when you look in the mirror. And the person that I look at in the mirror, I like that person, even with his warts and his scars. I like him, and so I think that people will like me as well if they get to know me and if they can forgive me my eccentricities.
Mm-hmm. Well, I say, if you have nothing else, I think you would have a great future as a public speaker, sharing your story. I think you shared it really great. I know I mentioned I had 10 pages worth of questions. I didn't have to refer to them at all. Like, you gave everything perfectly. So, if you want to come off your boat and, give your woman a rest, go be a public speaker, I think you could do a great job at that.
Well, I'd like to talk to kids. I mean, I'd like to give something back. Really, I'm not joking. And there's a couple things I'd like to do. If I ever become wealthy, one thing I'd like to do in the Republic of Panama is, if I ever become wealthy, they have a law here that once you reach 2/3 time, you can get out of jail. But what you got to do is have a job or study or something on the outside lined up. But if these kids that don't have any money at all and can't get a lawyer, they serve every day of their sentence. And this is another thing about the Republic of Panama. The United States, with all of their with all of their CSI and all of their technology, has a homicide resolve rate of about 65%, meaning 35% of homicides go unresolved. Here in the Republic of Panama, they have a homicide resolve rate of 99%. And how in the hell is that possible? They don't even have any technology. So how is that possible? And the answer is they just put a crime with a dude. If you are poor and you're part of a gang and they need somebody to pin a murder on, pin a homicide, so the books look good and everything looks good, hey, you killed that guy. No, but I didn't. But who gives a shit? You ain't got no money for a lawyer, so you're going down for that. And that really happens here. I'm guilty of everything I did. I can't complain, but there's a lot of kids here who aren't guilty. And I'd like to set up a small legal clinic for people that ain't got no money, and also a small clinic to help people get out of jail. I mean, like, if people who are like, hey, look, he's working, he's studying, he's doing what he's supposed to do, let him get out on his 2/3, because there's so many kids here. They're so poor and they're so mistreated by the system, you know, and the system's so corrupt. Thank God it's corrupt, because a guy like me can do well. But for them, it's terrible, because if you ain't got no money and you ain't nobody, you do your time day for day. So they give some kid that, you know, made a mistake 30 years, 40 years, he's got to do it all. And that don't seem fair to me. I mean, and now I'm not talking about helping some guy that's going to get out of jail and do something bad again. I mean, I think there should be a process of investigation of who are you. But, I mean, if you're somebody that wants to better yourself and working real hard, you know, help them get out of prison. I'd like to help these kids, because nobody gives a shit about Panamanian prisoners. Nobody. International, national, nobody. There's no inspections. You know, there's nothing. I mean, the system just doesn't work at all. It's like, you think the system is safe is bad. I mean, here's just broke. It doesn't do nothing. So that's what I like to do in the future. I like to help these kids, and maybe some speaking in that goes as well, like a clinic to the kids that are just like, that have been in trouble but not in trouble much. Try to save them, man, because God, this life is hell. It's awful. It's awful to have to be in prison. And they don't know anything. You get a kid, I'm sorry, I'm running long, I know, but if you get a kid that from the time he was 3 years old, he's been walking all alone, because his mother's a crack whore, I'm just being honest, and he's walking all alone. Is this kid going to grow up and be a doctor? And then we as society, we blame him. I got my licks. You know, you can beat me because I knew better. I knew better than what I did, but he didn't. I mean, he grew up in that gang environment. His mother was a gangbanger, a whore, and what is he going to be? I mean, he's going to be a gangbanger. He ain't going to be nothing else. There ain't no other opportunities for him. Nobody's checking his homework, you know. And so, like, there's so many of those kids that could be saved and I have a real heart for them, because I live with them, and they're not bad. They're not evil. They're good kids, and they just don't know anything. So I guess that's it.
Well, I appreciate everything. You certainly seem like an open book, you know, quite eloquent and intelligent. You know, I appreciate you reaching out and letting us hear the story of Wild Bill.
Hey, I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for the freedom to speak the truth, and I really hope that your listeners know how much I appreciate them as well. And I tell them, hey, look for me, find me. I'm on Facebook at Friends of the Prophet, Brother Bill, and we're on Instagram at Holiness Bill. So come and find us and get with us. We've got a really good community on there. It's not just about me. It's about us as a community. I do a lot of counseling and a lot of life coaching and stuff. So anybody that needs a friend, man, I'm your friend. So thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much, Bill. We appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to SS True Crime. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe. Maybe give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Tune back in every 3 weeks for a new episode. If you'd like to get in touch, feel free to reach out. Instagram, email, Twitter. Just follow the links in the show notes and you'll find us. Until next time.